waiting for Dr. Delia. There he is. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening, everyone. We have a couple presentations tonight before we get to our business agenda. The first presentation will be in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, our annual presentation in that respect. And then we will also have a follow-up discussion from our special presentation last time, which the board will discuss their thoughts on where we are with the Reimagining plan thus far. Before I begin, though, I'd like to start with a moment of silence in honor of someone that we lost in our district, someone who was very important to the South Huntington family. It is with great sadness that we share the passing of one of our own, Ed Garone. Ed began his career as an educator in the South Huntington School District in 1967 as a social studies teacher at Memorial Junior High. Mr. Garone later went on to teach at Stimson Middle School and also Walt Whitman High School until his retirement in 2002. Mr. Garone was an integral part of our athletic program. Since the 1990s, Coach Garone helped the girls' basketball team amass well over 300 wins. But before, he would have been piling up victories for the Wildcats decades before. In 1967, he began coaching in the boys' football program. And for 26 years, he coached the freshman, JV, and varsity teams. He helped shape many Division I athletes. He received numerous Coach of the Year awards and was also named Booster Club's Man of the Year. And even after Coach Garone's retirement, he was still a fixture, and he so enjoyed coming to watch the girls' basketball games. Our thoughts and our prayers are with Mr. Garone's family during this very difficult time. Should you wish to send your condolences, please reach out to our district clerk, Ms. Regina Caliendo, for the address. So, and I know as I was going through my time in South Huntington, how much a fixture Mr. Garone was, and he was really someone who, I didn't have him, but you could see him in the hallways, and he really radiated positivity and was a really warm man who was really beloved by his colleagues. So it's quite a loss. In addition, I would like to do also a moment of silence for the victims of Hurricane Helene, which has devastated parts of Florida, of course, and North Carolina and South Carolina, with really tragic consequences and terrible flooding that really we certainly didn't expect in those areas, and that those areas had never seen before. The loss of life there is staggering, and of course the property damage is unable to be counted at this moment in time. And then we have another hurricane coming, Milton, which is also destructive. So, we give our thoughts to the people of Florida as that looks to be making a direct hit in the Tampa Bay area as they deal with that hurricane. And we give our thoughts to the victims of Hurricane Helene as well as to Mr. Ed Garone and his family. I ask for a moment of silence for them. Thank you, everyone. Okay. I'm going to now turn it over to our Walt Whitman High School principal, Dr. John Murphy, to introduce our program for tonight on Hispanic Heritage Month. It's always a wonderful time in South Huntington. We're always proud of our students, and this is always a nice presentation to start off our meeting with. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Murphy if you want to take the podium, and if the board would like to go to the front row because our students will be on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ciapetta, Dr. D'Elia, members of the Board of Education and Cabinet. It is a privilege to be standing here reflecting on the rich and evolving history of South Huntington. As we mentioned before, we embark on a 100-year celebration, and what better way to identify the various cultures within our own community. How these changes have shaped and influenced our schools, and many of you know South Huntington is more than just a town, it's a community rooted in diversity, resilience, and deep commitment to education. Over the past 100 years, Huntington Station has transformed dramatically, culturally, and demographically. Our schools have been at the heart of that change, reflecting both the growth of a community and the unique challenges that come with a more diverse population. A century ago, South Huntington was a relatively homogeneous community, particularly of Irish, Italian, and German backgrounds. The schools at that time were small. Students shared similar backgrounds, traditions, and languages. As the population began to grow and shift over these last 100 years, so did the cultures that make up this town, and with it, the schools. In the last 40 years, Huntington Station began to experience a wave of new immigration. Families from Latin America, particularly countries like El Salvador, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, settled within the area, seeking better opportunities for their children. This influx of new cultures brought a vibrant energy to the community. Suddenly, our classrooms were filled with children who spoke different languages and carried different traditions, histories, and cultural perspectives. Schools adjusted to our teachers, as our teachers learned to navigate the complexities of a multicultural classroom. As what it was when the district started in 1924, we recognized that education was about embracing the richness of different cultures and that every student has a chance to succeed and add to the already established culture of South Huntington. The history of South Huntington over these last 100 years is a testament to the power of diversity and the resilience of our schools. From a small, homogeneous community to a bustling, multicultural hub, our town has seen remarkable change. And through it all, our schools have remained at the forefront, helping bridge divides, celebrate differences, and prepare students to face the world with open hearts and open minds. Festivals celebrating different heritage, language immersion programs, and multicultural events are part of the fabric of our school system. The children of Huntington Station are growing up with an understanding that diversity is something not to overcome, but something to celebrate. Tonight, we recognize our Latin American culture as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with the Walt Whitman High School Latino Heritage Club. I would like to acknowledge the Latino Heritage Club and the students, as well as the advisor, Ms. Priscilla Ramirez, who is also a community member, for all their hard work and efforts. The dances you will see performed are just a fraction of what is learned and shared amongst all our student body. Each building within South Huntington looks to do this as it showcases the cultures that encompass every part of our society. Kayla Garcia, our senior and vice president, I'd like to call her up, and she can talk a little bit more about the Latino Heritage Club.
Good evening all. My name is Kayla Garcia. I'm the Vice President of Latino Heritage Club. This is my 4th year in the club, and I could proudly say that it is a great club. Overall, this club has taught me how no matter our culture, we can all be valuable and we should be proud of our culture. Our goals in our club is to give students the opportunity to uphold an appreciation for the richness and beauty of our Latin culture with the differential cultural activities. We encourage to anyone to join on our activities and meetings regardless of being Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Our goal is to all be united together and see each other as a family. We show our culture by dances, community service hours, and other cultural activities. During Hispanic Heritage Month, we held 2 celebrations. For example, we have game night where we play games such as loteria, musical chairs, and other games that have brought us together. We all celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with our mercadito. We had a pupusa truck that was well attended by the community during the varsity soccer game. Our club got invited to our 2 primary schools to give a brief presentation about Hispanic heritage. It's exciting to see how the little ones get happy to see our dance performances and how they cheer us on. Walking in and seeing them happy demonstrates how of an impact we have to them. Our club also hosts a couple events and fundraisers throughout the year. We do food sales, Sabor Latino in December, piñatagrams in May, and a soccer tournament in May we call Futbolito. All of these events demonstrate community unity and our cultural backgrounds. We contribute to other clubs in our district, like World Language Honor Society and their International Night. Girls sign up and get to wear their quinceañera dresses or their Sweet 16 dresses one more time. Another club we will be collaborating with is the SEP team this year during Pep Rally. We are excited to surprise our peers this year with our choreography. Lastly, our club has gone on a few trips. For several years now, we have taken our Latino Heritage Club seniors who are able to visit different cultural places. For example, Little Spain and Callao. We hope this year to have more fun field trips. We can't wait for another amazing year. Thank you.
Three, two, one.
Baila la nena, creo que otra vez quiere bailar, porque escucha el ritmo con banda, sigue con los pies el compás. Otra vez la nena se para bailar, baila quebradita con el negro Juan. Esa nena linda se para bailar y llena de envidia a todas las demás.
Another night, another problem. ¿Cómo vas a permitir que ese whisky por tus venas te afecte así? There's no denying que el dilema es la botella. The kids are crying, dime qué dirán de ti. Your wife loves you, no te pone una querella. Y en tus manos una noche va a morir. Primo mío, me avergüenzo. Brindo con agua por mi condena.
Let's give another round of applause to our wonderful Latino Heritage Club. I'm sorry I was remiss. I'd also like to give acknowledgement to Ms. Casey Aparicio, our Latino dance teacher that helps out with these numbers. That will conclude our Latino Heritage presentation. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you during Multicultural Night when you can experience more of this.
All right. One more round of applause for our talented students. Thank you to our Hispanic Heritage Club as well. All right, we'll move into now our next presentation for the night, which is a continuation of a further discussion regarding the reimagining of South Huntington. Dr. D'Elia had a presentation last time. We received public comment, and we've received public comment in the week since. A number of emails that have gone to our dedicated Reimagining email address, as well as individual emails that went to the Board of Education. And rest assured that we have read each and every one of those, as well as the comments that we received that night, and have reflected on those as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. D'Elia. There's no PowerPoint presentation tonight, as I think Dr. D'Elia said in his Parent Square message. That's due largely in part to the fact that we released a lot of information on Monday night in response to some of the questions that we had received, and as well for Dr. D'Elia to reflect and make some thoughts tonight. So I'll turn it over to Dr. D'Elia.
Thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. All right, since last Tuesday, I have received, and the board has received, a tremendous amount of feedback via email, via phone conversations, via in-person meetings, and giving me an opportunity to reflect on one thing that I noticed very clearly. There was a common denominator in many of those emails, phone calls, in-person meetings, is the genuine love for K-2 and 3 to 5 buildings within our community. That was very clear throughout in basically everything that I have received. I haven't received much of anything in the other regard. But one of the things we still have to understand is that we have a portable issue that we're going to have to address, and that's not going away. So in time, we need to do something regarding the portables. But at this time, I am going to be recommending to the board that we continue with our K-2 and 3 to 5 model that we currently have here in South Huntington. And I'd like to turn it over to the board.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia. And as Dr. D'Elia said, tonight is more a night for the board to reflect, to discuss, because I know many of you wanted to hear from us, and purposely, I believe we were listening on the last meeting. That's why we didn't, we wanted to hear the presentation by Dr. D'Elia, to reflect on it, and to hear your comments as well. We really wanted that opportunity in that evening for the comments, and so that's tonight is an opportunity for us to discuss more, to discuss our thoughts on the plan, what elements of the options that were up there we liked, what we didn't like, to discuss Dr. D'Elia's recommendation, and to discuss where we need to go from here, because of course there is a portable problem, right? We have been trying to fix that problem for many years now. We've tried a few different ways. We tried initially with the bond. There were some recommendations in that would have addressed it. That plan didn't go forward. This was another plan. This was a plan that has come from a very good place, and I want everyone to know that. It was a plan that was well thought out and deeply thought out by the board over a couple years, because we want to solve this problem. The portable this board is not one to want to let things linger. We are a solution-driven board. We don't want to kick the can down the road anymore. The portables need a solution. And we'll discuss now, I'm going to open it up to the board to discuss whether to accept Dr. D'Elia's recommendation, and to discuss if we do or we don't, how we go forward from there, as well as the other aspects of the reimagining presentation that were there. There was a lot put forward that night, I know, and a lot of them are interrelated. The transportation did go hand in hand with the portable, because the transportation is a way to save money if we wanted to choose option C rather, to save money over time, to build up funds to replace the portable. So there were a lot of interconnected concepts. And really, we started this as well as we have a space problem. The space problem is exacerbated by the fact that the portables are nearing the end of their life. We've gotten good life out of the portables thus far because we have been diligent about repairing them and investing money in them. But there will come a point where no matter how much money we invest in them, they will need to be replaced with either this option that we had discussed in the month of September and in October, or fixtures added onto the buildings, permanent structures, and that was the cost that Dr. D'Elia had mentioned. So I don't want to talk further. I want to open it up to the board to begin our dialogue on Dr. D'Elia's recommendation, as well as all the other parts of the plan that were out there, because I think regardless of whether people liked K-2, 3 to 5, or a change in the model, there's a lot out there that was really good for the district, before and after care. Pre-K is a very important thing for the district as well, in my opinion, and I think we'll talk about that all tonight. So with that said, I'll open it up to anyone on the board who wants to discuss Dr. D'Elia's recommendation. I think that's the right place to start, and then we can talk about some more of the elements of the plans that we've put forth. Ms. LeCara, would you like to talk first, and then Mr. Bronson?
Thank you, first of all, for coming. I just wanted to make it clear that we had been working on the issue of the portable for close to 7 years. We tried to come up with options that would be possible, and we presented them to you. However, over the last few weeks, I have heard all the voices here, and I've read all the emails, and it is clear to me that you, as parents of children in the district, are very happy with the current configuration of K through 2 and 3 through 5. I know we still have to deal with the portables, but I am going to support Dr. D'Elia's recommendation that we keep the current configuration that all of you have spoken, that you are very pleased with, and your students are happy in those schools, and support the K through 2 and 3 through 5.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. LeCara. Turn it over to Mr. Bronson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. So just a couple of points. One is just on the spirit of just, again, sort of working as a team. Ultimately, when we put this presentation together, if everybody remembers the puzzle, collectively, whether you're a parent, whether you're a board member, administrator, teacher, community member, the goal is to educate our children. So if you remember on that slide, and we're all working together to make sure that our children are educated, that they're safe, and that we're doing so in a fiscally responsible manner. So I just want to make sure that despite the conversations and everything else, at the end of the day, I think everybody here is on the same page. My kids went to the K-2 and the 3 to 5, and it was something that we liked, but obviously other districts on Long Island have K-5, K-4, et cetera. So these were options that were put out there. The other thing that I certainly have learned through this process is I think probably going forward, I think we're going to have much more sort of inclusive as far as parent and community involvement up front. I think very often, we presented some options. I think it was more reactive rather than sort of it working, again, as a team, getting that input up front. I think that will be helpful going forward, again, just so that everybody's working together. Having said that, I also support Dr. D'Elia's recommendation, again, with the K-2 and the 3 through 5. There's different options, different school districts, but it's worked well for our school. I think, again, I've been on this board for a little over 7 years. I am and was a parent beforehand, going through the K-2 and the 3 to 5. And while each option did have some pros and cons, as we showed, I'm also supportive of the recommendation.
Mr. Biangasso?
Yes, I also support Dr. D'Elia's recommendation that we take it off the table as well. First and foremost, before being a board member, being a parent as well. And I think our model here is very unique. I've only been on the board a couple of years, and people in this room come from different, some people were schooled here under this model, and a lot of people like myself grew up in different areas that had different models, and you've seen what makes this model so special and why people are passionate about it. And first and foremost, in addition to, the hours to go into meetings, being a good board member also means being a good listener and recognizing that you represent the needs of all the community. And we're parents first, community members. And we do have the issue of the portables. I've only been on the board. This is my first term. And being on facilities, understanding it's a real problem, but also knowing that there are other ways we can go about doing it. And I certainly think being inclusive as well, having focus groups come in and look at some of the different areas and some of the different concerns that have come up, mainly things like transportation, starting and end time, busing. There's a number of things that we could work for. I think down the road we do need to address the issue of the portables. I echo Mr. Ciapetta's concerns on that. We don't want to pass the buck, but under the current conditions, I support Dr. D'Elia's recommendation. I think we should take it off the table, and anything going forward should keep the model in place. Thank you.
Mr. Scragg?
So I want to begin by saying, as a parent of a current third grader and seventh grader, I understand the passion and love for South Huntington School District. My family has that passion. We are Wildcats through and through, and we will be to the day we die, no matter where we end up. When this discussion started, I was kind of taken aback a little bit, and because I was taken aback because I am a creature of habit. I am somebody that does not like change. I like things the way they are, status quo. And I saw that, my older son, who's made it through this model, was really blessed through the gift of going through the elementary configuration that we have and the sixth grade center into Stimson now. So I was definitely kind of a little hesitant moving down this path. As that person who is a creature of habit, who is in his 19th year of a job that most people stay in for 6 or 7 years, and I plan on dying in that job. So this wasn't an easy discussion to have, and some of you are probably feeling that way as well. At this time, I cannot support Dr. D'Elia's recommendation, and I'll let you know why. So far along this panel, we've heard portables, 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 portables. This recommendation does not take care of the portable issue. It just pushes it down the road. We are still going to need $15 million minimum at some point in time. And we are back to the table tomorrow morning, this board and any board that comes up after us, having to deal with that. We are passing the buck. We are letting the problem linger. I don't see a full solution here, but we can get there. So I don't support the recommendation tonight, but if I can see a solid plan of how we are going to have that money down the road, I will gladly throw my hat behind this recommendation. But I would need Dr. D'Elia and the cabinet to come back to the Board of Education with a solid plan and say, here is where your $15 million is going to come from. One of those places it's going to come from is the taxpayers' pockets. Another place it's going to come from possibly is cutting into the programs we have. So for these reasons, I cannot support the recommendation tonight, but with this information down the road in the next couple of weeks, if we can get there, I would be able to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Scragg, for your comments. Very appreciated and thoughtful. Do you want to speak? Ms. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. And I'll begin how I began last week in really thanking the community, all of you for being here. I know you're taking time out of your very, very busy schedules, not just to be here, but for the thoughtful emails that you've sent, the phone calls. Some of you have taken time to come up and meet with Dr. D'Elia. I really do appreciate your passion. And I sat in your seat, and that's how I ultimately ended up on the board. I love this community with every fiber of my being. My kids are third generation Wildcats, and I say that proudly. And I remember graduating here, a long time ago, and I couldn't wait to move back here and raise my family here and ultimately one day serve our community as a board member. I was a Birchwood Bulldog for 1st through 5th grade. And, because I was there so long, I still remember every word to the Birchwood School song. Mr. Bernadelle can attest to it because I sang it for him on his first day of his new principalship. So I remember and embrace how great it was to be in a neighborhood school. That said, as a board member, as many, of my board colleagues have shared, this was really multifaceted. As the board, we're responsible for the district, the entire district. Yes, educating our children is first and foremost. We are also fiscally responsible for this district and everything that we do with every single one of our taxpayers' dollars, whether they have students in district right now or not. We're also an employer, a sizable employer. We've got loads of staff, educators, custodians, nurses, school bus drivers, and we have to take that into consideration as part of the longevity of the district as well. But again, we've heard your feedback. It was never the intention to try to fix something that wasn't broken. Our K-2, 3-5 model with our stellar 6th grade center, our wonderful middle school, our high school that, you know, blows me away with how many college and AP courses we are able to offer and add every year, how many students we have excelling in those AP exams, you know, no matter what kind of learner they are. Our dual language program, it's one of only 2 school districts in Suffolk County that offers that. You know, and as you've said, we're doing a stellar job. You know, that said, I don't want to fix what's not broken. I am supportive of the K-2, 3-5 model and maintaining that, as Mr. Scraggs said, if it's possible. You know, we were trying to be proactive with the portables. They are at the end of their lifespan, but they're still standing, you know, and they're healthy. They're a fine learning space. My daughter was in one last year at Maplewood. We don't want to wait for the roof to cave in, and that was the genesis of this conversation. You know, we are not the type of board or the type of administration to wait for something catastrophic and then need to rush to make a decision that hasn't been well thought out. So I am aligned with Mr. Scragg in that, you know, we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how we take care of the portable issue. As we've had many, many discussions, it's not just a financial and fiscal decision, it's also a logistic issue. As we begin tearing them down, if we're going to replace them with brick and mortar, those students, those learners that are in those rooms need to learn somewhere else that's just as equipped and equitable for them to have a positive learning experience. And we're at capacity in most of our buildings, which again is a wonderful thing that people are moving into this district. We have neighboring districts excuse me, that are closing elementary schools for many reasons. So lack of space is a great problem to have. We welcome people into this district with open arms, and we want to continue to do so. So I am supportive of Dr. D'Elia's recommendation to maintain K-2, 3-5, and I would love to continue the discussion on how we can replace the portables in a timely and fiscally responsible manner.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. I'll share my own thoughts now. I, like Ms. Meyer, had a similar path, I would say. We both graduated from Walt Whitman High School, just a year or 2 apart. I myself was a child of K-6 schooling. I was at Country with the entire time, and I did love it. I had to say I really enjoyed being in that building for all 7 of my years, to know the staff, to know the janitors, to know all of the health professionals that were throughout the building. They would know my name by the end of it. So I did truly, truly enjoy that experience. And I remember when there was great consternation in this district 20-something years ago about changing from that plan to the Princeton plan. Many of the same conversations that we're having here tonight that we had on October 1st and that we had earlier than that, those were the same type of passion that we heard back then. Please don't change. And we've realized change is difficult. As Ms. Myers said, this is coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of trying to solve what's proved to be an intractable problem, as well as trying to make our district even greater than it is now. We're always looking to, we trump our niche ratings and all of the impressive gains that we've made at the high school, the AP offerings that we have. We're always looking to make things better. And I think the pre-K plan, and part of that was a way to make things even better and to improve our district throughout. So we came from a good place to try to improve our district and as well to solve a problem that has proved difficult to solve. That said, you know, we are public servants and elected by the public to hear you, to listen to you. Sometimes we'll agree and sometimes we won't. That's kind of the nature of the process. But what we've seen here is we've seen great passion on this issue. We've seen our community come out. We don't always see this room have this many people in it. Often we don't. And we understand that what makes this district special and what's made it work and what's helped to drive our success is trust and relationships, continuity as well. We've had 2 superintendents in a decade and a half. That has helped bring us. We are not like other districts. When I talk about them, when you watch other board meetings, I won't name the districts, but they're rancorous. There's division. You may see board members fighting with one another. We don't have that in South Huntington, and that harmony among the board and between the board and cabinet has helped to drive us to great success. And I believe that is a fundamental reason, as well as all of the talented administrators that we have and the wonderful teaching staff that we had, and those relationships as well, the relationships between the board and the South Huntington Teachers Association, between the board and all of our unions. All of those positive relationships are what has driven this district to the top and what has made it envious. And as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Night, we need to remember that all of our successes have come as our district has changed. And those successes are really a miracle for us to be able to take this wonderfully diverse community and our wonderfully diverse students and achieve the kind of success that we have is really unheard of. And it's been a model. It's been a model for Long Island. It's been a model even nationally. Dr. Murphy has traveled throughout the country talking about what we've done with our AP scores and our virtual AP program and how we've driven students into APs and as we've done that, increased our passing rate. We've received National Magna Awards for doing so. And so I say all that as we're not trying to fix something that's not broken. We understand and we've heard the passion for the K-2, 3-5 alignment, and it's not my intention to have rancorous board meetings and to depart from something that the community clearly has great passion for. So I am supportive of Dr. D'Elia's recommendation as well. Now that said, of course, we still have a portable problem. That hasn't gone away. We may have shifted our focus, and we may have to move on to Plan C now, but the problem with the portables is one that remains. I see the majority of the board is in support of continuing with the current K-2, 3-5 alignment, and given that sense from the board, that it is what we will do. But we need to continue to discuss the other aspects of the plan, how to continue to address these plans, what to do with the portables, and as well how to drive our district forward. What about the pre-K model that we think is so important? The ability to have universal pre-K would be unheard of in Suffolk County. We would, I believe, be only the second district to offer that, and that is something that will drive our success forward even further, I believe, as well as make our district even more desirable to come and improve housing prices. So that takes us to that topic. I think, thank you, Dr. D'Elia, for your recommendation. I think it gives some finality to that aspect of it. It takes it off the table. I hope that gives the community some sense of relief and comfort. But I didn't want to continue the discussion with the board about other remaining aspects that we have put up there and that have been discussed, in particular transportation. I'd like to start by talking about transportation. As Dr. D'Elia said, we have a situation in which we have about 60–70% of our district students being driven by district vehicles. That we think has a lot of benefit to it, in that we get to know our district drivers, they're South Huntington employees, as well as it's a savings, and it is a savings, because we will see that we're often at the mercy of a contract transportation company. We have to go out to bid every year, and we never know what that bid's going to come in at. But what we do know is we only get one bid that's offered each time, and that bid is always much more than the previous year. So it puts us in a position of uncertainty, and that's kind of where the starting time piece came from, the desire to have less reliance on the contract transportation, as well as to bring more of the routes in-house with our own South Huntington drivers and family. So I want to open up the discussion on transportation. Where do we go with transportation? Under each model, there were changes to the hours proposed. Some were slight, some were a little bit more. Transportation is also a problem that's not going away. It's going to be a problem that we're going to need to deal with in the future, and I think that's a conversation that was part of Reimagining, but it needs to be a conversation going forward as well. So would anyone on the board like to help start us off on that? Ms. LaCara?
At this time, I would recommend holding off changing any of the school's times. I would then recommend that we create a transportation focus group. And this group would evaluate our current concerns and needs for transportation and our future. They would come up with some strategies, some plans, and then they would present a report to the board that we could look at the options they've come up with. I would recommend that the transportation focus group be comprised of a PTA representative from each of our 8 units, community members, and administrators.
Thank you, Ms. LaCara, for your thoughts on that. I'll open up to other thoughts from the Board of Education on transportation, specifically school start and end times. Mr. Bronson, followed by Mr. Biangasso.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I am supportive of focus groups or any involvement on the front end from parents and PTA, et cetera, because again, I think that was one area where just sort of from a lesson learned, I think we should get more involvement up front, more input from that. I do agree with your recommendation not to change any start times at this point, but to get that input. And also just, I know from our discussions, just again to be transparent with the community, you know, one of the concerns obviously is making sure that with any buses that we get bus drivers. And I know that's always a concern, you know, just in not only in New York, but across the country there. So I do believe from our discussions that at least from a coverage standpoint, while again we only have one bus vendor, that we've sort of strategized to make sure that as we consider increasing our buses, that while we're looking to get drivers, if we don't get drivers, from a transportation standpoint, we do have that vendor to sort of backfill and cover. So it's sort of a give and take. So I don't want anybody to think, well, as we add, what happens? Like if we can't get the drivers, well, that's why we have the contracted service and vice versa. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. So I don't want anybody to be concerned that as we have these discussions, that ultimately we cannot get the kids to school.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. Before we go to Mr. Biangasso, just want to bring Assistant Superintendent Mr. Eddie Smith in for a moment because there's been a lot of discussion about the marketplace for bus drivers, and we have seen a lot of, if you drive down the road, you'll see help wanted, and there's a desperate need for bus drivers. But that, I want to talk about our efforts, and you know, I know you have talked about and had great success with recruiting new bus drivers, so if you could talk a little about that.
Sure. Most recently, the district did change our practices where bus drivers do have a 6-hour package, which brings them over at a more attractive rate of time. Also, we do find that a lot of drivers that we're speaking with, it really is the benefits associated with being a driver for the state, meaning that they have access to the pension system and retirement. That is certainly something that's a great interest of them. When they're working for private vendors, they're not having that. So in the last couple of months, I've had the pleasure of sitting down with multiple drivers that we have hired as part of our South Huntington family, and I do expect more. That is something that we've done a great job doing in the recent months.
And I assume we've seen a number of people and a great interest in those positions. You've been able to onboard a number, as you said, right?
Yes, we have.
Mr. Biangasso, did you want to speak on transportation?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Mr. Bronson and Ms. LaCara as well. I think focus groups are extremely important. I think, you know, Mr. Ciapetta, you said it earlier, one of the, I think, beauties of working on this board is even when we don't always agree with one another, we get along well, and we believe very strongly in working together and getting things done. I think focus groups is an excellent place to start. It allows a healthy discussion from a cross-section of many, especially our parents groups. We have a wonderful parent-teacher association, and I think bringing the focus groups in and getting more feedback is important because that's how nice, and you heard me say it before, part of being a good board member is being a good listener. And when you hear people and you hear other ideas, sometimes you think of things that you didn't normally think of before, but I think it's extremely important that focus groups are in place. And I also echo the sentiment that I don't think we should, at this point, look at start and end times changing.
Thank you, Mr. Biangasso, for your thoughts on transportation. Any others?
Yes, so I do also agree
Mr.
with...
Scraggs, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. I do also agree with Ms. LaCara's suggestion for focus groups. I just want to be clear that the focus groups would work towards deciding what the change in school times would be. because in order for us to maximize bus savings, the school times do have to change. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just, I want to drill down on what you said there. Are you supportive then of the focus group studying appropriate start and end times with the goal of reducing reliance on contract transportation?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And is that the same, Mr. Bronson, for you? And
Yes.
okay. And Ms. LaCaro, is that? Okay. Ms. Biga, Ms. Meyer. Sorry, Ms. Bigasso. Coming right back to you. Yes, Ms. Meyer.
I'm also supportive, of having a focus group with that outcome. And just before we move on from transportation, I think we would be remiss if we didn't thank Dr. Wright for the tremendous amount of work that he's done in even the proposed start times that we had up there. We are very fortunate to have someone dedicated to transportation in our district that thinks of it in this multifaceted way. Dr. Wright probably dreams in bus routes and probably can't drive through South Huntington without thinking, oh, I'm on Elementary Route P. It has, taken a tremendous amount of thought and data crunching, not only to project what our savings would be, but to find a reasonable way for us to realize that. That said, I do understand how hectic schedules are for parents with children, one child, children in multiple buildings, and we would love to, utilize the focus groups to find the best solution that we possibly can while still realizing the savings for the district.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Any other thoughts? Mr. Bronson, yes.
While it's not directly related to the focus group as far as start times and the buses, the other thing I think we should, maybe it's a good segue to also talk about just broadly speaking, sort of traffic and traffic studies, because I think we've also talked about that a little bit. I don't know if you want to take the lead on that, Mr. Ciapetta?
Yeah. I do think that's an important component of it. Let me just want to tie up a couple other things on transportation. I think the focus group is an excellent idea. I think really this is something that is important to get, and I think it has to be, like you said, people from all buildings, because that's very important, because there's different interests, right? Maybe people want to look at the high school starting times. Maybe, there's a lot of research that it should be later. I think this is an opportunity to have that full-fledged discussion. I think it's also, though, important that we have people from administration on this committee as well, because transportation, as Dr. Wright could tell you, it's a very niche area. It is very complex. As he likes to tell me, it's your first classroom in each day, and we view it that way, and it's very important to create the proper environment. So I think we need to have our experts on there, because they need to be able to tell us, you just can't pick these start times out of a hat. You have to have enough time so that the bus can perform its next route, and that's one of the challenges that we have in South Huntington. With the current start times, we have to make quite a number of routes, and we can't use all of our buses that we currently have in-house to make that next route because the start times are too tight. So I do think we need that kind of expertise as a part of this focus group. Just from moving on to traffic and transportation, I do think that, obviously we're kind of, as we go along and move along, we'll discuss how this focus group would look and how to recruit for it. But I do think it's important to, to have an end date on it with a goal in mind when we would want to, implement these time changes. So I think we should, we have to pick that end date now, but I do think that, it can't be open-ended. We should have a date certain, because we will need to, if we move that down that road, and there is a recommendation from the focus groups to make times, we do want to give the community enough time to adjust. So, we can talk about further, as we go forward and continue our meetings and our discussion, how much time is appropriate. We can hear feedback from the public on that. Just going into traffic, I agree. We've heard traffic concerns. We've heard them at a couple ends of the district. We heard them from the Memorial side, if we were going to use it for 5th or 6th grade. We also heard it on the other side of the district, if there's a change in Silas Wood, if that's going to become a pre-K center. We understand those concerns. I mean, some of those concerns have, in Silas Wood, it would be emanating from a different use. Memorial, over there, it would be emanating, I guess there were concerns, with St. Anthony's and the traffic that's generated by St. Anthony's. Just to let people know, we have a great relationship with St. Anthony's. We've already been in touch with St. Anthony's, already have conversations with them, in ways that, how can traffic be improved in that area in general. So, we'll continue to discuss the aspects of it, but I do think that, and we've heard it from the public as well, and we want to listen, and I think, even if the report comes back and it says, there's no traffic problem, or if it says there is, and these are the adjustments you need to make, I think it can give you some valuable information. Ms. Bronson, your thoughts? Or?
Especially as we figure out the times, whether we decide to change start times or not, as part of that transportation component. Obviously, whether it's St. Anthony's or otherwise, just based on commuters and even just got the St. Anthony side, you've got Jericho Turnpike, you just have a lot of things. So I think it is important that that's a component to the focus group, that information is sort of all intertwined to make the best decision for the district.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts on, I know we're giving a lot of information tonight and a lot of thoughts at once, but, this is, coming up with a lot of things here. At the same time, we've obviously thought about a lot of these issues in the last few years. Other thoughts on, before we move on to talk about a couple of the aspects of so far? I know we've talked about pre-K a lot. That's been part of the plan. It was not the driver of the plan. It was part of it, because all of the information tells us that that's so important to our community. That pre-K is expensive. In the city, it's universal. It's a right now, and if we could do that and offer that to our students, that would be incredibly valuable to our students, our families, and our community as a whole. That would be a real feather on our cap that is not offered elsewhere. So I want to just get some sense of the board, whether that's something we want to continue to explore out of this plan. And like I said, there's no, other than the redistricting decision, we're not making firm decisions on things tonight. This is really a discussion about what direction we want to go further in, what aspects of what we've discussed or presented we want more feedback on, more information, whether from more board discussions, directions to cabinet, or focus group areas. We're only kind of making that one K-2, 3-5 decision tonight. But in terms of the pre-K, would somebody like to discuss their thoughts on pre-K, whether that should be an element that we continue to look at? Ms. Meyer?
Thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. My thoughts are that we should certainly continue the discussion around universal pre-K. As you mentioned, there really aren't many other, if any, school districts that are able to tout universal pre-K that's open and available to all district students that would want it. We've continually talked about things like kindergarten readiness, early intervention, and then creating a more seamless experience. And I think, some of the feedback that we've heard from our community members and that we share is how stellar our academic experience is. And as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Ciapetta, I think having universal pre-K will only accelerate that. I do think we should continue to consider whether we are able to host a single UPK center in the district, given the real estate that we have available. But again, I would also like to recommend that we create a UPK focus group, potentially with PTA representatives, certainly community members, some of our primary educators and administrators. That's probably not a comprehensive list of people that should be included, but I would love for us to holistically consider things like what's the optimal duration of the day for pre-K, 5 hours, 6 hours, something in between, depending on what the traffic study yields. If we were to go with universal standalone pre-K center, should we stagger start and end times? What would before and after care look like that's age appropriate for pre-K, and what would be the ideal hours, for those in the community that would leverage it? So I would love to recommend that we continue the conversation and bring together those focus groups as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Meyer, as we've said, there's a lot to dive in there, and today is really the beginning of that pre-K discussion. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, including the providers and the appropriate times. Other thoughts on aspects of what Ms. Meyer said, standalone versus non-standalone, and the providers. Yes, we'll go down the line. We'll start with Ms. LaCara.
I would agree with Ms. Meyer. I would hope we can find a standalone pre-K. Where we have our pre-Ks now, we had to give back some of the money to the state because we didn't have room for the additional students. And we had talked in the plan to hopefully be able to use the money from the states. We could provide 300 students with free pre-K, but we have to have a space. So I would like to support the focus group for the pre-K for all the reasons, and for them to evaluate a location and everything that Ms. Meyer had already commented on.
Thank you, Ms. LaCara. Mr. Bronson.
Yeah, I'm also supportive of pursuing the interest in the pre-K for many of the reasons, again, Ms. Meyer already mentioned. In speaking to teachers, I think, and also Dr. D'Elia, you had mentioned this in your presentation, just the kindergarten readiness, when you talk to our teachers, just identifying those students that went through pre-K or not. My wife's also a speech language pathologist, so again, I know the benefits of early intervention. So I just think there's so many benefits, and also the financial benefits to the parents. Like I remember when my kids were little, I had to pay for pre-K, and I was fortunate that I was able to. But again, it's also a benefit. So I'm agnostic whether it's where the location is or anything else. That's part of the purpose of the focus group. But I definitely think pursuing the conversation is a worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. We'll go next to Mr. Scragg, then followed by Mr. Biangasso.
So I also support Ms. Meyer's proposal, that we continue pushing forward with pre-K. I think that is a huge benefit to our community. For me, my older son, who's now in 7th grade, had the benefit of going to pre-K, and by the time he got into kindergarten, he was reading some. He was really well prepared for the beginning of his academic journey. My younger son, who's now in 3rd grade, was a pandemic kid, and he did not have the ability to attend a preschool. And I can see a grave difference in both of them from the time they entered to kindergarten to where they are now in their lives. He is definitely a little bit more behind where my older son was. So there are great benefits to pre-K, and especially if we can offer it free with the space we have. No other district can do that. That would be another jewel in our crown here in South Huntington. I do also want to just hit the other point that Ms. Meyer began to talk about, the before and after care that was mentioned in last week's presentation. A cost-effective before and after care for the parents, as we will be changing school times eventually. And the pre-K will also have probably a different start time than the other kids in the family. I do also recommend that we go down the road that we began of pursuing an in-house before and after care for our South Huntington students, along with our pre-K.
Okay, so you're talking across the board, not just pre-K?
Yes, yeah.
At the elementary level?
Yes,
obviously.
yeah.
K through 6?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thoughts on that? Just before, well, Ms. Biangasso, why don't you...
I'm also supportive of it. I think it's a win-win for the district. I think it only helps us, and as Mr. Scragg said, it's another feather in our cap. I do think there are some logistical issues, obviously, and I think that's part of the focus groups and discussions. I think mainly is how long the day should be, and a lot of it is, I think that's extremely important as well. Is it a longer day? Is it a shorter day? When would you start? When would you end? So I do think there are logistical issues that we need to discuss. But certainly I am in favor of the discussion going forward. I think it's a win-win, and I think that it only benefits the district. This is a great district. As I've said, I kind of look at myself as an adopted wildcat. Some people in this room were schooled here. I kind of feel like I became an adopted wildcat, and I've seen how great this district is. And I think this only makes us better. But I also think we need to have a discussion about a lot of logistical aspects as well. It's not just as a matter of, okay, this is great, but we have to look at, start and end times, where we would be, and also staffing as well. So I think that's where the focus groups and discussions going forward are important. But I think it's a discussion that I'm in favor of. I don't see, just from the educational standpoint, I see nothing but positives.
And your thoughts on before and after care at K through 6, not just...
Oh, absolutely. I support it if it's something that can be done and there's a need for it. Absolutely. Yes.
Mr. Bronson, on that point?
Yeah, I'm supportive of exploring it. I think, obviously, some of the questions that were raised at the past meetings is, how it would be staffed and how it would be managed. And, you want to be, what is the expression? Penny wise, pound foolish, or vice versa. I'm horrible with expressions. But, yeah, I think definitely worth exploring because, again, I just think it's a benefit to the district as long as it's, viable and as long as parents feel comfortable with whatever services we provide. But I would definitely like to explore it.
Ms. Gower?
Definitely support before and after care at all the elementaries.
Okay. And, I agree with what my colleagues have said. I think it's well thought out. To me, one of the critical pieces of the the reimagining plan that was presented by Dr. D'Elia was the pre-K concept, because I think that that's a value and a benefit to, as I said, our students, and it's something very important for our parents as well, given the incredible cost that is. We've seen costs explode elsewhere. If we can provide that at no charge, I think that's an amazing opportunity for us. So that's something that I just was always so excited about this plan. When we talked about the changing, district lines, that was to me a means to an end to solve a problem. But the pre-K is a way to have growth and to take our district even further going ahead. All right. Yes, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Meyer.
Yeah, just one other point on that, and on the pre-K, to have state-funded universal pre-K, to your point, is not only a financial benefit to the community, but to the district as well. And from a holistic wellness perspective, as chair of the wellness committee, we try to think of that as multifaceted as possible. So when we say kindergarten readiness, we're not just talking about the academic facets, but the social emotional ones as well. And as South Huntington students, anyone in our UPK program would also be eligible for our free breakfast and lunch. And hopefully that program will continue as per the governor. But that's huge, to be able to provide for our children nutritionally, academically, and social emotionally at such a young age. It will only benefit all of us going forward. And as for the before and after care, I'm certainly supportive of us continuing to pursue that. I think we've heard from a lot of families, not just cost of before and after care, but how soon you have to sign up, even maybe before you know your plans for the year, and there are waiting lists. So if there's any way possible for us to provide maximum opportunity for our families, I would highly be in support of that.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. You make a great point about pre-K. This is really, it's a win-win too, because the money is there already. This is not an outlay of cost or additional money by South Huntington residents. It's there. We have money that is sitting on the table that we're not using, nearly half of our allotment because of space concerns. So I would definitely support a standalone pre-K, because that allows us to fully fund it, fully utilize our full allotment, and to offer it essentially then to any student that wants it. It's voluntary, of course. You don't have to come, but we're going to put together a great program for it. But there's a waiting list, I believe. Dr. Hendry, you can speak to it. I believe we currently have a waiting list.
Yes, Mr. Ciapetta, we do, of about 60 students that are currently waiting for a placement if anyone disenrolls or moves.
And that's significant to be able to offer to those 60 as well as hopefully more. Our goal would be, to as many students as want to be able to offer it to them, those 60, and then to take it further, to do more recruitment efforts, to let people know about the benefits of this program for them, for their family financially, as well as the social emotional growth and academic growth of their students. So I think we've covered a lot of aspects of this, but I do think we need to come back to the portables just a little bit, because that is going to remain the elephant in the room. As we're shifting gears here, we cannot present to you at the moment what the Plan C is going to be. I call it Plan C because Plan A to me was the bond, Plan B was this. We'll move on to Plan C. We have very talented people here that I know will come up with ideas. We have started to, brainstorm them. It's going to take some time. We still need to come up with a solution. This is not a, we'll see you in 3 years, when the portables are really in disrepair. I think there's a couple options already in what's been presented. If you pull out the pre-K from the elementary buildings where they are and move them to a standalone center, that will already help with the capacity issues in those schools. And I would support as well, looking at starting an annual fund for this and starting to build it up, make annual contributions into a dedicated capital reserve that we contribute each year to, so that we can build that up. And if we need to do the portables, to have money there to do it. Maybe we won't. I mean, we really don't know what's going to happen. Very important change that happened from when we began this initiative was that this year, and last year as well, But this year in particular, the kindergarten enrollment was lower. So I think that does give us a little confidence that the portable problem needs to be addressed, but it gives us a little bit more time because that lower kindergarten has a significant impact across both Countrywood and Oakwood. So that is significant. This year's class was, I believe, Dr. D'Elia,
367 between both buildings.
Yeah, and it was 200, I believe, at Oakwood and 167 at Countrywood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's a significant dip. You know, we could go the other way. It could be over 400 next year, and then, you know, there might be a different conversation, as you know, as Mr. Scragg and Mrs. Meyer alluded to. But with those numbers, and then if we have another year like that, we might be in good condition. You know, the deadline on portable replacement might move. So that is significant to monitor those enrollments. But we do need, you know, as Mr. Scragg said, I think he made a great point, right? We need a new plan, a plan C. You know, we have to address portables. We're not giving up on that. We're not recognizing that. We're not saying that problem is solved. And, you know, I would suggest initially that we could start a capital reserve with some seed money as a way to start to build that up. But, you know, I think that's one aspect that will help, as well as removing the pre-K classes. Thoughts on anything else that's been mentioned on that? Anything else that people want to bring up? Yeah, Mr. Bronson.
I was just going to say on the portables, if we, so with the capital fund, I mean, and we're hopeful, you never know with the population, but if the population stayed sort of flat and they were unneeded and we had a capital fund, would we be able to use those funds? If we sort of put them aside, the trend continues, or maybe the enrollment goes down, even though I hope it can stay up from a board member standpoint, would we be able to use the capital contributions for other capital projects? How does that work?
Mr. Conway, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure, thank you very much. That's correct, Mr. Bronson. If over time we have X dollars built up in the capital reserve, and let's say the need for the portables were to decrease, or we have done it through, let's say, a transfer to capital, through a referendum, you could request from the community permission to use that capital reserve money for a different capital project down the road.
Thank you. And I guess also just from some of the discussions we've had, when we talk about replacing the portables, again, depending on the enrollment, you know, best case scenario, we don't have to replace them. More realistically, as I agree with Mr. Scragg, there'll probably be some level of replacement necessary, but I also think we've had some discussions that it may not ultimately be necessary to replace all. We may actually end up somewhere unknown, but it may be a part where some need to be replaced, but not all, if that's correct.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it could be all or some, you know. I think Dr. Hendry, I'll turn it over to you. I think you've got a good sense of the four buildings and what's most significant and pressing to replace. And if you want to just...
Sure. From a population standpoint, obviously, our first concerns are with Birchwood and Oakwood, and the numbers being larger there than they are in Countrywood and Maplewood. So my recommendation would be, as we look to explore those first, but at the same time, my recommendation would be that if we are going to put a structure there, that we do not tear down the portables until that structure is built. Finding a new spot for roughly 100 students would be a little difficult, so that would be my recommendation.
And the capital reserve that Mr. Bronson mentioned, Mr. Conway, sorry, how does that go about creating? That's voter approval to create it, and then voter approval to dispense money from it. Is that correct? Or
That's correct. There would be a proposition required to be on a particular year, requires voter approval to be set up, and then funded like any other reserve in the years where the funds were there available to put it in there. And then as that money sits from year to year, when it's established or accumulated, I should say, to the proper dollar amount we would need, it would be a proposition to, like I said earlier, utilize it for project X, Y, and Z.
Just a quick question on that. Obviously the budget changes every year, but if we were to do something like that and we put up to referendum, is it capped? Is there like a max amount that you can put up to a voter approval?
Upon creation of the reserve, you would establish it with the parameter that the term of the reserve would be for X number of years, let's just say for argument's sake 15 years, and then you would also have a maximum dollar amount that this would be established up to.
Would that maximum dollar amount increment over span of like 15 years, kind of keep up with the cost of living, or is it just like a standard, this is how we would build it?
No, it would just be the dollar amount that's allowed to be held in, say, Capital Reserve A. And let's say over time you were to hit that amount and you wanted to save money for, let's say, a larger project, you could set up a secondary Capital Reserve B, we can call it, with its own term and dollar amounts, and go from there.
Thank you.
I also have a question for Mr. Conway. So you mentioned that the money would have to, when we were desiring to use it, go up to referendum. Okay, so that happens once a year. What happens if, say, there's an emergency and we need that money before that election cycle?
I believe the answer to that would be that we are allowed to have a separate referendum proposition mid-year. Okay. I would check with legal on that to verify that, but I believe it is possible mid-year should such a situation come up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Meyer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. Just, on some thoughts, and thank you for all the information, Mr. Conway, and thank you, Dr. Hender, for all the due diligence you've been doing. I know you've assessed the portables at all the elementary buildings. You've been trying to get creative around configurations. This certainly isn't a new discussion that we're having. I'm afraid I don't share the optimism around decreasing enrollment trends. I think the COVID babies, we all know what happens when people get, locked away together, and we were all together for a very long time. They won't even be starting kindergarten until potentially the 27-28 school year. So my concern is that these decreasing enrollments are a blip or an anomaly, and that we may be facing this, issue sooner than we think. Also, as a school district, of course, we have to save for this, because if we don't have the money in our pocket, we can't take out a home equity loan to go do this. Our version of a home equity loan would be putting a bond up to the community and the taxpayers, and given price sensitivities around everything, that's really not something that we want to do. That said, I think we're also aware of the realities of construction costs, and Severio from H2M was here last week sharing, yes, there is, this is a significantly more costly project for us as a public entity as it would be for someone in the private sector. And my concern is that the longer we wait, those construction costs will continue to escalate. Yes, interest rates are going down a little bit, but they're not going down tremendously yet. And since COVID, the rate at which all of these things are inflating is just staggering. So what might be $5, $10, $15, $20 million today, I fear, could be 10, 20, 50% higher as we continue to do this. So what I would like to ask for as next steps is all the information that Mr. Conway has been sharing in terms of what are our options for funding a capital reserve. If we needed to use our transfer to capital, which we typically allocate each year for other facilities projects, and many of us have sat on the facilities committee, Mr. Ciapetta, Ms. LaCara, I know you've been on it for over a decade, and knowing that we would need to, trade off all the things that we would typically do for facilities to fund this more quickly, what would that look like? It would be great to understand that, as well as, are there any other avenues? What haven't we thought of? I know that we discussed replacing the portables with portables. Is still a significant cost. I think the quote was about 85% of the cost of brick and mortar, and then we don't receive building aid on that. So we take a huger hit, and it just doesn't make sense. So again, this isn't a new conversation that we're having, but now that we're facing with the reality with potentially needing to fund this, any information that Mr. Conway can provide us would be very helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Other comments by board members? Mr. Scragg.
I just want to echo everything that Ms. Meyer said. I have the same exact concerns as her. I'm not as optimistic. I mean, the population trend just going down. And I also support the idea of when we have to building permanent structures. So in 20 years from now, the Board of Ed at that point is not sitting where we're sitting.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not in favor of replacing portables with portables for the reasons that we talked about. They're temporary structures, and really you're losing money on it, because you don't get the building aid on it. So that doesn't really make sense, and I don't think they particularly look nice either, but that's the least of the concerns. That's just my thoughts. Other thoughts on this? Or anything else that we've talked about thus far? All right, well, we do have a number of community comments. Just want to kind of summarize or coalesce what we've discussed so far. From the board's perspective, really the only main decision reached was with respect to the redistricting, and the board was in favor of continuing the K-2, 3-5 alignment. There was an interest continuing to study start and end times so that we can, realize savings and bring more routes in-house, but we see the benefit of a community focus group on that, that brings in representatives from different areas, including, by reaching out to the PTAs, and obviously, we're discussing this just tonight, we need to crystallize those details in the days and weeks to come. This is an initial discussion. Portables obviously remains a major concern. We have, potentially some help from taking pre-K classes out, if we can find a standalone location for them, such as Silas Wood or Memorial or elsewhere. There is a concern, the capital reserve is an option, but it's not a panacea. There's no great solution to this. If a great solution existed, it would have been found already. But connected to the redistricting, we understand the one solution that does not appear popular, so we need to find an option C. I'm confident that we can find one, though, it will also have pros and cons. I think the community also addressed, the board also indicated a desire to continue to explore a standalone pre-K center that has a lot of questions itself with it. What start times to have, what end times, how long should the day be? Should we have pre and after care associated with that? And Ms. Meyer suggested a focus group, and it seemed the board was generally supportive of that, as well as studying before and after care at all the buildings. So, that's that's what emerged thus far. Leaves certainly a lot of homework for the board and administration on those regards. Does anyone have any further comments, questions, concerns before, we have a number of comments here from residents. We'll go through them. Maybe some of their comments have changed in light of the board's discussion, but we'll go through them in the order that people signed up. Anyone else first? I know Dr. Leah wants to make another statement.
I could go after the public.
Okay.
I don't want to hold them.
Okay, great. So we'll continue our community discussion now within the parameters of what we've discussed. Of course, the rules that we had discussed last time to ensure efficient and respectful conversation will continue. It will be 3 minutes. You still have the 3-minute clock. And so we'll go through. If you don't want to speak anymore, just let me know. If you still want to, come on up. So I'll go in the order that people signed up on. We have about 15 speakers. The first speaker is Jessica Davies Sikoski. Are you here? Oh, yes. Come on. Okay. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Just to let you know, we have Gail Brady and Simone Blum on deck and double deck. So.
I love that. Seeing as the Mets are currently winning.
Oh, excellent.
Sorry for the recording. Dr. D'Elia and other members of the board, thank you for hearing the community's love and desire.
It's not working.
There's no on.
We'll reset the time, don't worry. We're not going to count that.
Dr. D'Elia and other members of the board, thank you for hearing the community's love and desire of the K-2 and 3-5 model. Ms. Meyer and Mr. Scragg, I very much appreciate your fiscal concerns of the lingering issue, and consideration of taxpayers' money. You wonder where money is coming from to address these issues and being proactive with the portables. However, I would question if taxpayer monies that could have gone to this issue have been ill-spent elsewhere, approved by the board. Why was the job of transportation liaison created for the retired athletic director, Jim Wright, when the district already has a director of transportation, Laura Brothers? How much is he being paid to fulfill what seems like a role that had not previously been required because Laura was fulfilling the responsibilities? How much is Mr. Polanski, a retired superintendent from Huntington, being paid to mentor our new administrators, and why can this need not be met through an internal mentoring program, as we have done so in the past and is successful for many districts across Long Island? Is it true that there was money spent to have a meeting at Oheka Castle to talk about this plan when the JKAO offices have recently been redone? What about the cost of rebranding of the logo and reproduction of items for schools, students, and staff? How much should this cost the district, and why was it truly necessary? These questions do not require a direct response, but rather a reflection on whether these are the best uses of the district's funds, as I do not have the utmost faith in the board being completely transparent with information regarding any or all of these questions. All of these and others are monies that could have gone into a capital fund or seed capital that we could have drawn from to address the portable problem we have now. I would also be interested to know how the profit, if any, received from Memorial has been utilized each year the building has been rented out. $1.2 million received per year is a large sum of money and one that we will no longer have in utilizing Memorial as a district ourselves. I would further inquire as to who is ending the current lease, the school board or the schools currently renting the space. Can I ask that last question?
Sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Who's ending the lease? Is it the district or the schools renting the space?
The district. Thank you, Ms. Davies-Sikowski. Next is Gail Brady, followed by Simone Blum, followed by Gloria Tello. I apologize if I pronounced your names wrong. Ms. Brady.
Hi. Just as a nod to the opening presentation, I think that the diversity and the integration in our district is one of our best attributes. It enables children to be educated not only with their formal education, but cultural experiences, life experiences, and it was a profound impact on my daughter. My question is, no matter what you decide with the different schools, will integration and diversification always be throughout each and every school?
You mean if well, right now I think the board's not interested in reorganization, but.
Okay, I wasn't sure because you said K through 5, and I know you had other issues with the older schools, I thought, with the Memorial School and with the Silas Wood School, so I just wanted to make sure that.
No, I mean, there wouldn't be any diversity changes in those. I mean, if Silas Wood flip-flopped, to Memorial, it's the same population going over there,
so diversification and integration always going to be.
It's always a priority for us. I mean, that as we put up at the beginning of the presentation last time, we had a pie chart on, what our demographics are, and that's, something we celebrate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. All right, next, Simone Blum, followed by Gloria Tello, followed by Joanna Yanati.
Hi, thank you very much for tonight, and thank you for giving the community the feeling of being heard. We really appreciate it. I appreciate that the board is looking at creating focus groups with not only the PTA but community members, because it seems that, a lot of communities, as you know, a lot of Board of Ed meetings, you don't see anyone. They're ghost towns except for the Board of Ed. And it's really beautiful to be in a community where people truly care. I think my concern is when I look at, and I hear the presentations today, the one overriding commonality seems to be a lot of supposition. Well, maybe there'll be lower enrollment. Maybe there'll be, there are no specific data sets. What is the live birth rate in this community? What is I feel like there's a lack of concrete numbers and research. I only did get my email to you yesterday, but I would really love this district to take advantage of maybe speaking to Dan Feliciano, who is the Lean Six Sigma expert, because we keep saying, well, what do we do and how do we push this money? And maybe having somebody who's really expert to look at the numbers. Everything that you suggest feels to me like it has an incomplete data set. We talk about the pre-K and the money that comes in, but how long does that last? And then what is the cost of the teachers and when that expands? And I start to wonder, well, you talk about other school districts closing elementary centers, but if all this money is available from the state, why aren't they taking the money from the state and using it for that building? Why is it only us? Are we missing something?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that last sentence? I don't want to understand what you said.
If
you could just speak a little louder too.
Yes, so you're saying other neighboring districts
Yes.
I've got my eye on a clock. Other neighboring districts are closing elementary centers, and yet we have all this funding for pre-K. If they're closing buildings, why aren't they taking advantage of that funding? And I feel like maybe we're missing data sets. Why is it that it could be so lucrative for us and not for them? So I feel like I would really love for there to be more transparency in the numbers and more specific research with complete data sets, because everything that I've seen seems to be missing crucial information, like even disassembling the portables. It's disassembling the portables, but it's not re-landscaping. It's not closing up the holes that the portables leave. Every single thing that I've seen seems to be missing pieces that help inform the decision.
I think Dr. D'Elia did speak to the cost of portable deconstruction. As to what other districts are doing, I can't speak to them right now.
Well, you mentioned that. I didn't.
Yes, I don't know why they don't want.
I brought it up because you mentioned it.
Oh yeah, I don't know why they don't want full day pre-K. Maybe it's it's not a priority for them, but it's something that I think it should be a priority for our district.
Yeah, absolutely. And my only point is that perhaps we should look at getting expert help. It is offered free, but it's usually multiple six figures, and really taking the specific data and being able to make the decisions that are not only good for now, but forever, as we either grow or shrink, and really looking at that data. Is the live birth data lower? Is it raised instead of guessing?
Well, actually, I want to address that. We're not it's a hard thing to track, right? Like when you're doing enrollment studies, it's certainly not a precise study because it can't capture how many houses sell versus don't sell. That's been a big variable in South Huntington and across elsewhere. Because as you know, interest rates are very high now. There's a lot of homes that could potentially turn over in South Huntington that haven't because there's very low inventory right now. But we did do, and I believe we put it on the Reimagining site, Dr. D'Elia, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we put up the BOCES enrollment study, and so we did do a study on that, and that was an effort to obtain, that source material, that precise data that you speak to, and they look at the live birth rate, they look at all of those factors, but there are variables that are really difficult to control. We don't know, what houses are going to sell, what's not. If a house sells, is it, somebody coming in with kids who in the district or not. So those are variables. But in enrollment, we do have a sense based on the study. Unfortunately, this year is a good example of, and we went back and looked at it, I mentioned before that there were 367 kids in this year's kindergarten class. Our study had us over 400. So even with a study, it's not perfect. So they missed that by, 33 because there's variables that they can't consider. But I encourage you to look at the enrollment report. It was very detailed. It gives us the history of South Huntington's enrollment, and it does project 10 years into the future as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And are you open to getting outside consultation from an expert, or specifically the one that I've managed to procure?
Sure, we'll look into that. We'll have Dr. D'Elia contact them.
Yeah, I'll have contact you to get further specifics on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria Tello, followed by Joanna Yanati, followed by Claudia Ferreira.
Hi, good evening. The main reason why I came here today is for my younger son, Lucas Tello, who has autism, and I was very concerned about the changes, so I'm very happy that now he can continue at Maplewood and complete his 5th grade, and thank you to Mr. Lombardo for welcoming my son back into the district. I'm very pleased and thankful.
Thank you. Is there a way, that mic is so low, is there a way somebody can either raise the mic or...
Is it on? We can...
Yeah. It's off? Okay.
Because we can't... I can't hear.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to hear. Ms. DeMonte, maybe that if we can switch that, nobody's using that microphone, so. Okay. Joanna Yanati, followed by Claudia Ferreira, followed by Stacy Learison. I'm sorry, that's a tough name.
Okay, first, thank you for hearing us and for heeding us. You know, I mean, one of my biggest issues was from the beginning, I didn't feel heard. Now I
Can't
do.
hear. Can't
That's
hear.
great. You can't hear me now? Can you hear me?
That's good, yeah.
But it's too low. That's the thing. Okay.
There you go.
That's good. So,
Just keep it close to your mouth.
okay. I agree with pretty much everything. We all know as a community that we need a lot of renovations. I mean, we're just talking about the bare minimum now. I think personally, and I had a long rant written that I don't need now, but I don't think the answer is to go to C. I think it's to go back to A. And as far as, you know, Vision 2020 is concerned, I mean, I supported it. I know a lot of people that did. I also know that not enough people did. And I think that the reason people vote no on big bonds like that are, one, they feel they don't have a vested interest in the schools, no kids in the schools or whatever, and that's not true. If you live here, you own a house here, you do have a vested interest in the success of the schools, and that people don't trust it. These objections aren't insurmountable. We just need to educate the community on why the success of the school district affects everyone in the town, not just the people with school-age children, and by being open, transparent, and honest about what the bond is and what it's going to pay for. And the answer to that is educating the community, not 2 weeks before the vote. You know, people need time to know what, you know, to learn. You're all educators pretty much, you know. It should be something that we as a community can do. I mean, I'll volunteer. I'll knock on everybody's door and tell them, you know, we need this to happen. I mean, the tax increases, sure, you know, it's more money, and a lot of us don't have any, but it's not, you're not talking about everybody's taxes doubling. It's really minuscule in the long run, and I think that as a community, we can overcome that if we work at it together. And I think, you know, all of us are passionate enough about it that if we're given the information, we'll spread it as much as we can. So I think, you know we need the money, and I think that, I think we could get, you know, we just gotta sell it as well. People are spending, they need to be sold. So, you know, that's pretty much it. And again, thank you, because this really, we're all really happy. So,
Thank you. Okay, Claudia Ferrara, followed by Stacy Learhissen, followed by Tamara Risalto.
Okay, so I, like the others, am thrilled with the decision to keep K-2 and 3-5. I wish it didn't take the community outrage and uproar for this resolution, and remind you that at prior meetings you said you didn't need community involvement to make the decision. But we deserve that. We appreciate more transparency in the future, better communication, and as Simone Blum mentioned just before, full data sets to be able to make decisions in a more timely manner. Mr. Ciapetta, you said that harmony on the board in this district is great, and while harmony is great, the Board of Education's job is not to be harmonious, but to question the points that are made, to question and challenge some of the information, and to get real information, and not just suppositions to make decisions. You mentioned that the board's job is to be fiscally responsible. Many of you said that, and I agree. I don't see how UPK for everybody is fiscally responsible, and how kicking out the tenant at Memorial is fiscally responsible. The loss of rent of $1.2 million to obtain the $900,000 that you said that we keep giving back to the state does not make financial sense. That does nothing also to consider the fact of the construction costs as well as the staff. And when you increase the cost of the staff because of their benefits over time, in any of those other options that you gave, particularly B, which I know is not on the table anymore, the staffing cost over a 15-year argument is the greatest expense. So adding more staff, I don't think helps anybody over the long term and is not fiscally responsible. Same thing I would argue with the bus drivers by giving benefits and bringing it in-house. Have we looked at the full cost? And I would ask you that when you look at your actual focus groups, that they look at the full cost of the benefits, of maintenance, of purchasing buses. What does that really look like?
Thank you, Ms. Ferrer.
Okay, so...
Can you state your name?
Oh, I'm Stacy Larison.
Larison, okay, sorry, thank you.
You were close. A couple observations. First and foremost, I liked that the community spoke and that the school board listened. I'm fortunate enough where my two that are in the district would not have been impacted by that decision directly, but as a homeowner and a taxpayer in the district, ultimately that change would have had some ramifications on me. That being said, I've listened to you tonight on the things that you've talked about, and from a project manager perspective, it sounds to me as though you have a lot of balls up in the air. And
A lot of what?
A lot of balls up in the air. And when you come to the community with a proposal, it is so packed with things that we have to decide on that by themselves are major initiatives that maybe if they were taken as chunks, as opposed to trying to get everything in the kitchen sink into one proposal, it would be better received. I think it was Mr. Bronson who mentioned more transparency, not just like my previous speaker said 2 weeks before, but at the onset of the process. Not only more transparency, but numbers. You can't argue with numbers. If you come with, like the other speaker mentioned, statistics, like for example, this plan that did not go through. Had people known how that would have affected class size, how would that have affected diversity? You're changing buildings. How does that look for the community? Does that mean that the diversity is still there percentage-wise? Is the class size still the same? How does that the funds get distributed across these buildings? You have numbers that can back up what you're trying to sell. It goes a long way for people to make clear decisions on what they need. And then with this issue that you're having with pre-K, maybe if you solve the issue with the portables and what that ultimately will be, would that mean that you're expanding the building? Is there more space now that you can have pre-K, or do you need a separate building, or you do pre-K first, get all the pre-Ks in one building and then see what the space looks like in the other? But you're trying to do everything all at once, and I think that's where you're losing ground.
Thank you for your feedback. Tamara Rizalvato, followed by Neil Manella, followed by Susan Casero. Excuse me.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. D'Elia, his colleagues and the board for actually listening, taking the time to meet with the parents independently of large groups. As parents, we understand your concerns, your problems that you are arising, the pre-K that you guys bring up. I feel as though going forward, it'll be a much more collaborative effort between the district, the board, and the community members, judging by the amount of people you've had come out for these. I don't think we'll be quiet. I don't think we will sit back any longer. I think you'll have a much more community involvement. My recommendation is to also have a community liaison, potentially to go back and forth with the community members, not just the district, because it is kind of hard for community members to get the message on what's happening. I wouldn't have found out unless it was for other parents. And there are plenty of people who don't have children in schools that are also impacted. So I would recommend a community liaison, not only between the community, but maybe between our non-English speaking population, as I feel those were untargeted.
Thank you.
I'm questioning on if there is any way that you guys could look at census data I know it's not a perfect formula, but there is census data that show how many people that are born in the district 4 years ago, 3 years ago, in the years to come. So there should be some sort of numbers that you can, and again, it's not a perfect formula, but again, within 40 children difference, that is pretty on point, if you ask me.
That is, sorry to interrupt. That is what the BOCES study relies on. They pull those birth rates. Yeah.
And how many births are coming.
Yeah.
Also, the housing that's on the market, the amount of houses that are open on the market in the neighborhoods. Also, what about busing contracts that are limited to increases year over year? And my understanding, there are some bus contracts that cap out at a certain amount year over year. So again, I know you want to rely on internal busing, and I believe, Mr. Bronson had brought up that we have a fallback on some community buses. If we cannot fill those seats with actual employees, that we still have a contracted bus company to fall back on. So is there a way to ensure that increase does not go up astronomically year over year, that there's a cap at a certain amount that we know for a fact it will only go up 3% or will only go up 5%, that may not jump up 8, 9, 10% year over year?
It depends whatever the company, we have to go out to bid on it, so it depends what the bid comes in at.
Okay.
And we generally only get one contractor who bids on it.
And we just ask that going forward, there is clear transparency, like a couple of speakers before said, the data before it comes out to the community. So that way the community can come out informed and not feel as though there's an untrusting relationship between the district, the board, and community members. Because I think that was part of the problems that we felt as though it was not a very trusting relationship up until really this point. And again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Neil Manella, followed by Susan Cassaro, followed by Courtney Enderly, followed by Kristen Janess, followed by Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson. That's the list. Is that the end? That's the end, yes.
I want to start by thanking everybody on the board here. The education that the children come out of our district with is the product that you guys sell to the taxpayers, okay? Dr. D'Elia, we had this conversation yesterday, and I thank you for bringing us in and spending a large part of your day hearing us. And I believe you really did, because you guys took some action here today. You chose the children, really, over the money, okay? And there'll be more money, and I'm sure there'll be more problems that you'll come to the taxpayers for more money. But the product will remain intact, and that's the most important thing we have here, okay? A couple of things I wanted to touch on. We still have this electric mandate, which is the law right now. You need to buy buses in 2027, I believe, that are going to be $400,000 a bus. So I don't see us getting out of this contract with the bus company anytime soon. Maybe we could be less dependent on it, but there's definitely going to be a shift in that, and the expenses for drivers at $55,000 is maybe today's expense if you figured that out at a 30-hour work week. But you're also talking about pensions. So we're going to be paying pensions on bus drivers into the future, which will affect future boards and future boards' budgets. So I think part of the issue that the public has with trusting the board is when every solution has to do with more jobs, especially if it's admin jobs that seem to be a popular topic that people bring up here. There seems to always be salaries for jobs. There's always salaries for administrators. But we're talked about moving kids, and again, goes back to the product. So that needs to be something I think the community either needs to understand more or needs to stop happening, because there seems to be a lot of money that goes to payroll, and payroll isn't necessarily where we need to be spending these days with the litany of things that you guys are bringing up. Next thing, declining enrollment, reducing wear and tear on the portables, where we'll find money for it. Pre-K. If the district wants to eliminate the contract with Memorial, I think maybe you should look at sizing that down. They may be having a problem with enrollment as well, and maybe you can put the preschool right into Memorial, solve two birds with one stone, keep rent roll, and be able to get your pre-K in. Now that leads me kind of to my last part of this. What does this mean? Today you said that we won't be redistricting the students. Does that mean that Silas Wood will remain the same, Memorial will remain the same? Is that option C that was in the original proposal last week going to take effect in 2026? And if so, what does that look like now? Or is everything just scrapped?
Yeah, I'll address that. I mean, not everything is scrapped. I think what the board committed was that the K-2, 3-5 model remains intact. And that, no changes to that. So those 4 buildings remain as they is. There's no district lines being changed. As far as where the 6th grade building would be, where pre-K building, that is something that the board said we're going to continue to discuss and look at and direct the administration to study.
And that would still be looking to take the change in the same time, 2026, 2027 school year?
We don't have a time frame on it, but I mean, you know, I don't want to put a time frame on it now. It could be 26, 27, you know, whenever we feel, you know, the administration completes their data, reports to the board, and we're comfortable with the data they give us.
So it sounds to me that the proposal of last week is kind of done with, and now the main focus is on how we're dealing with the buses and the pre-K.
Those are a couple options, yes. I mean, I think we've, you know, the 4 options.
For the sake of the community members and what they got to go home and rest their head on the pillow tonight.
Yes.
What do they got to be thinking about?
There's no change to K-2, 3-5. I think that's the best thing to say. And those options, you know, have been replaced, and we're pulling the pieces out and discussing the things that we still think are beneficial, as well as continuing to look for a portable solution. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quickly, thank you, Mr. Mel, and you and your wife yesterday taking time out of your very busy work schedules. Since I have a bigger audience here, if you could just give me a minute, you bring up electric buses, because I did do a presentation to the community last spring, I believe it was.
Yes.
Or many people there. I'm not sure how many people are online, but if what I'm kind of waiting for and what the local politicians have told me, because they're trying to help us with this, we should know something in January for the 27 school year as far as where we're going with this. I'm not the only nervous superintendent out there. I can tell you in my group, they're all very nervous because the impact of that cost, I couldn't even tell you where to start as far as the amount of cuts we would have to make that a reality. That is scary. We have to wait. I'm waiting, and I will absolutely report back. It could be in the governor's initial proposal in January when she does her state of the state. It could be delivered there, but we're in close contact with our politicians because of what I'm concerned about is the devastation it would create in not just our community here in South Huntington, in many communities. And that's one thing that still keeps me up at night until I really get, the answers on where we're going with this. So I can tell you our local politicians have been working on this. They've heard the superintendents loud and clear that this is, listen, where it's coming from makes a whole lot of sense. There's no doubt about it. We want the generations to come to have clean air in any way we can. But I'm in charge of running a school district here, and the last thing I want to do is, tear apart a school district, because that's exactly what it would do at this current state. There's a bus company out there that had, I think, 11 electric buses last year. And I promise I'm going to stop. It's just my rant on electric buses. They had 11 of them last year to use as trials, pilots, as you may call it. Consistently, 7 of them were in the garage, needing repair. We're not close to ready. Like I said, I understand the premise behind it. Absolutely 100%. At what cost? So, thank you. Thank you for yesterday.
Okay, next, Susan Cassaro, followed by Courtney Enderly, followed by Kristen Janess, followed by Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson.
Oh, it's a perfect height for me.
Don't draw. You can take it off if you want.
It's a temperamental woman. Okay. I just want to say that I am appalled by the behavior of the board and especially Mr. Chiappetta. You've spoken about trust. You state that the board gets along, and when you have conflict, you discuss it like adults and not get scared and say, ma'am, calm down, or I'm going to have to get security. Things like that are just very rude. The way the board handled themselves is inappropriate. You have to applaud a parent who's passionate about a situation or where they stand. And to belittle them is just inappropriate. I'm a parent of an autistic child, so yes, I'm very passionate and have had to be for a long time. Busing. How are we saving money if we have all schools start and end at the same time? Kids will be on the buses longer. Currently, it's first picked up is last dropped off. Just so everybody knows. First picked up is last dropped off. It's not first on, first off. So the kids are going to be on the bus a lot longer. Where will the buses be housed? What about maintenance on the buses? Do we have to go to the other type of busing before we purchase all of these other ones? UPK, no one was against it. We all want UPK, but there's a better way than realigning the whole district. My daughter, before we moved here, went to Amityville, and UPK for everyone is in that school. If the board was a student, you would fail your class. The way the proposal was presented is disgusting. You didn't expect the turnout that you got on October 1st. You didn't expect all the questions and statements that you got on September 4th. You didn't have any answers prepared. You listened and then took our ideas, or at least mine, in your proposal and then scrambled to put stuff together. You changed cited work. You couldn't even tell us what numbers you used to reference anything. You need more of a you need to be more diligent in your research before presenting to the community and avoid all of this. No one has ever opposed replacing the portables. However, all 4 buildings won't be done in the same time. Will the square foot be larger than the portables? Why can't we present it with different vendor bids? My daughter was in a portable for 1st grade at Countrywood and currently in a portable for 2nd grade. I love the rooms as they feel more homey and welcoming. I understand that brick and mortar for the longevity, but what about the rest of the buildings? Many of the buildings have more issues. How do we get involved into the different committees? We have so many ideas. How can we share it? Why can't we house UPK in the district office and Silas? Add a working cafeteria to JCO if it doesn't have. Unique district with many towns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Enderle, followed by Kristen Janess, followed by Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson.
All right, we have to hold it. That's the trick, right? Holding it? Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Dr. D'Elia and for listening to the community, and then for the board listening to him. Putting aside how we got here, a win is a win for the kids in our district. With that said, right here I have an email that I sent to the board on August 7th. And included in this email, one of my questions was, will there be a committee formed, and how does one go about requesting to be a part of that committee? To which Mr. Ciapetta replied, we do not anticipate the need for a committee to make any decisions at this time. What changed between then and now? Now everyone thinks it's a great idea to not only have one committee, multiple. Was it the doctors and lawyers and the other formally educated folks getting involved? Was the idea coming from a stay-at-home mom just not really good enough? That's how it felt. I feel like the last few months have been such a waste of everyone's time and money. There's a different timeline on when these talks started. A year, 18 months, all the way, I heard 7 years tonight. Imagine what we could have been accomplishing in this time had a committee been formed way back in the beginning. All this talk of not kicking the can down the road, what was the last 2 months or since this talk actually started? So now my questions are, and can you be very clear on this, who is choosing the people to be on the committees?
We haven't decided that yet. We
Okay.
can discuss it. We certainly want the PTA to be involved.
Okay. Is it volunteer? How does someone going about requesting to be on one, and will you be requesting other people to be on one? And do we have a timeline of when this can be accomplished? Are we talking volunteers being on board for a year, 2 years, 3 years? Like, what is an ideal timeline for these issues to be solved?
I mean, I think some of them, colleagues on the board could speak. I think with respect to transportation, right, obviously there is an urgent need for that. I anticipate these getting up and running fairly soon. The board can discuss. I'd, love to get a report, within 6 months on certain of these issues, but if it needs more time, it needs more time, I think it needs a deadline spur action, but if the committee is still working and needs more time, then we have to listen to the committee.
When are you going to start forming these committees? Is that going to begin tomorrow? Is that going to begin the next board meeting? What are we looking at here?
I think we'd like to announce something within the next month, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson.
You missed her. She was Janess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Kristen Janess, followed by Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson.
Hello. So I don't really have remarks prepared because things didn't go as I think I expected, but I do want to genuinely express my thank you to Dr. D'Elia, to the board for hearing the community. I think it needs to be stated yet again that I started hearing rumors about this potential switch to a K-5 configuration as long ago as January, and it's very confusing to hear the board members or Mr. Ciapetta say that no, nothing's been talked about, nothing's been shared, nothing's been explained, and then to have that sentiment, but I've been hearing rumors. So I want you all to really think very, very, very sincerely about that. How did that happen? Because I think that's important to the talk about transparency. I also think that it's really important for us to, I believe Stacy mentioned it, that this needs to be kind of packaged and taken step by step. And I think the priorities need to be laid out so that if the portables are the issue that is most necessary to be figured out, then really we should be starting our talk there. And then I think I just also kind of want to ask very explicitly, so moving forward, no conversation about K-5 configuration is going to be brought to the table again, right? And now everything is going to be about portables, and then potentially UPK, potentially transportation, potentially before and after care. Those are like the main things that I heard.
I think that was the sense of the board, yes.
Okay. I would think it's very good if you could somehow put that statement out as soon as possible.
Yep.
So that, and then I also wanted to ask, like, so are you moving forward with the PTA meetings as planned, and if, you know, what that might look like?
I can answer.
Go ahead, Dr. D'Elia.
Yes, I think it's very important that we continue with the roadshow, I may call it, between myself, any board member, Dr. Hender, and Mrs. Chofi, PTA Council President. We have them scheduled, and they will remain. I know the topics may be a little different with what the board has discussed here tonight, but I think it's in our best interest that we continue with those meetings.
Okay, again, I think it kind of goes to that statement of like kind of focusing them, like maybe just the portables, because that's what parents are really concerned about at this point for those meetings, and then the conversations about transportation or UPK are tabled for just a time, or you mentioned you want to form focus groups about those and you'll bring those back. It's just a suggestion, but I do really feel that like most of this has just been very, very, very confusing. And then finally, I just want to use my last minutes to mention that everyone I spoke to over the last several months that was not a part of the board was like, you're not going to be able to do anything. The decisions are made, you have no say. And I really want our community members to hear me when I say, they listened, you listened. It feels to me like you listened. And I think that's really important for our community members to know. We can come together and we can have these conversations.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to touch upon those PTA meetings. A lot of new information tonight, right? So I think the one thing I don't want to do is to continue to upset this community. So if I go to these PTA meetings and if, we're still trying to figure out exactly the dissemination of the community groups, how they looked, who the constituents are. One thing I think would be very productive at these PTA meetings, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of confusion, to try and bring that confusion, take it down, and see where we're moving forward right now. And I think that would be one of our main priorities in moving forward, and also continue to hear the feedback. That I think would be the two. As far as coming with definites, as far as we're doing it, I think there's a lot of work to be done with, our focus groups and community groups, and to see where we're going to go. But I look forward to those very productive meetings that we have scheduled moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia, and I agree with that. I don't think we'll be coming with presentations. It's more of, and even before tonight's meeting, it was always to obtain feedback, and that would be the same purpose, to answer questions on any topics. Kathleen Evers, followed by Patricia Swanson.
Thank you. I'm very glad that the board has decided to keep the K2, 3, 5 buildings. I would like to ask, though, Dr. D'Elia, I believe it was mentioned in the last meeting that there does appear to be a bit of a disconnect between the outgoing second graders and the incoming third graders. Is there a plan to have a committee or any type of plan to make that a more seamless transition for those second graders who are now going to new schools and the third graders, and making sure that those second graders are prepared?
Yes, absolutely. One thing I discussed with Dr. Hender, our Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, I'm not just going to say it and just sit here with this, and I may have upset a few teachers with that last week. That's not my intention. But yeah, the articulation needs to increase and needs to get better. We're moving forward with this K-2, 3-5 model. That's an area that needs to be addressed, and we have to be creative in how we're able to do it, because we have a dynamite group of teachers that are in this district, every grade level, every subject area. We're so proud of who we have, but we need to do a better job. That's on me as far as that articulation piece. I'm not just going to say it to say it, but Dr. Hender and I have had conversations of how we're going to going to go about it. You know, at some point, I do have a day job here as far as how to move forward with the, you know, but this was so much priority in my life, sleepless nights, because I've been here a long time, and I love this community. That is the reason why we're number 7 out of 61, because we work together. And that is the reason why long nights in thinking about my recommendation. And I understand where the concerns are on the board regarding moving forward here. I know I'm taking your time, but I'm sure Mr. Ciapetta will give it back to you. But I think it's very important to, as you know, as we move forward, you know, I have to reflect. I'm not perfect. You know, I'll be the first one to say it. You know, but I have a large responsibility here for the health of this district today, tomorrow, long term, and I want to see it continue to thrive. You know, 7's a nice number, as I said. You know, I want it to move up, and you know, I know the community plays a big piece in why we're number 7. But there's people that have been here. This is just me generalizing, that people have been here for a long time. Our teachers, our custodians, our bus drivers, everybody is the reason why we're ranked as high as we are. And you know, a lot of reflection on my part. You know, I was assigned to do a job here, and the last thing I want to do is create a divisive community as well, because that doesn't, I see it, I know it was mentioned up here. Part of my professional development is watching other board meetings. I'll admit it. I do spend time doing that. You know, seeing what issues are in other places, how they're being handled. But what I do see in a lot of those communities is divisiveness. And we got to keep moving that needle forward here. We're not happy that we're just going to rest our laurels on number 7. And we got to keep moving forward. We got a great staff, a great community. And like I said, I'm going to leave it as a lot of reflection on my part. And I also want to, this is going to be my ending spiel, but I know we have the rest of yours and I think one more. But I do appreciate the support of the board. And yeah, we have a lot of work in front of us here. Because the last thing none of us up here, you know, are driven to raise taxes, cut programs, cut staff. So we got to really put, you know, but I have a lot of confidence in everybody here, our staff, the community, that let's attack this together. Thank you.
Thank you. You did touch upon just the great staff and the teachers that we have in this district. Sorry, is that better? No.
Is it what? I can't stand these lights. Don't work.
No, it's dead. I'll just talk really loud.
Wait. Good. We can hear you.
Okay. Better? You did talk about the teachers and the staff, and the educators in this community are great. I think it's one of the things that makes the district great. In any of the planning meetings for these proposals, have the staff and the faculty of the individual schools been consulted, since they are the ones with the boots on the ground? I understand they're not necessarily all parents in the district. I come from a family of educators, so I see how important it is when you have the people who are literally in the classroom with our children giving their opinions and their insights. I'm just curious if that has been taken into account in any of these meetings, and if you are going to create a group or a community group, if you would consider putting the educators in there as well, since they are the ones who are on the day-to-day on the grounds with our kids.
Yeah, and we intend to have staff members on there as well, teachers that want to volunteer, administrators for certainly. I think it's incredibly valuable as well for, in particular, the pre-K focus group that gets created, but I think for the transportation as well. So we will look to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Patricia Swanson.
Hi, I'm Patricia Swanson. I want to thank you all for listening sincerely, but I'm not going to spend my time thanking you because I have more to say. I need the board to do more than listen, because you have a duty to the residents to put in the work. You took an oath, and the phrase from the policy on the district website is to do the will of the people of the district. It's not an oath just to think about numbers. Mr. Scragg, you made a comment that you're worried about passing the buck, but unfortunately this board passed the buck in June, July, August, September, and until today, when you let those numbers and those presentations go through with the number of deficiencies that were there. Dr. D'Elia was very, very giving of his time, and we spent an hour yesterday with Mr. Conway, Dr. Hender, and Dr. D'Elia, and I was able to have a 25 slides of inaccuracies, missing information, confusing information, and just numbers that physically didn't add up. How did this entire board not see that the enrollment numbers of A, B, C, and D proposals didn't add up to the same number of students? They varied by 400. Some had 231 extra students, some had 300, some had 400, some had 0. How can this board say that they were doing their diligence? I really want you all to go home and think about the fact that you're not here to sit here and get along. You can differ in a respectful manner. That is your job. That is why we are asking you to do this. I didn't run for the board. I also have a day job. I want to sit at home at the live stream and hear the wonderful work you're doing to get us to be 7th or 1st. I think you could do it. Because if this is the amount of the work you put in and we got to 7th, what if we actually looked at presentations before they went online? The next thing I want to say is that there's things that were left out that are not minor details. Why did no one mention that a referendum could be considered and was potentially being considered to change the transportation busing? Because I kept racking my brain how 5 schools that started at the same time could use less buses than the 2 runs that happen right now. And that costs money. So if that referendum cost should have been put into option B. And everyone's confused, and we're trying to make it less confusing by lumping things together and showing savings, and no one knows where it's coming from. And that takes up all of your time. And you have plenty of things to do besides answer my emails. So I really want all of the board to stop and think that your job is not to just say yes to whatever information comes across your desk, but to spend as much time doing your homework as all of us parents did. Because this is why we elected you. And we do believe in you, and we want to see the best for our students.
Sorry, just a question. I didn't, so I understand the referendum part. What did you mean by that?
So in option B, one of the ways that transportation would have less cost, if you have 5 schools that are going at the same time, it was referenced in several of the meetings that could happen because if they're neighborhood schools, there'd be shorter commutes.
Yep.
And then in our meeting yesterday, it was discussed that another option of that is also to change the mileage. You can't change mileage without a vote.
Correct.
So that was never proposed in a way that was clear to the members of the district.
The mileage was not we didn't propose anything changing mileage though.
So how would 5 schools starting at the same time and all of that enrollment of students use less buses than right now we have 4 schools that use the same buses making 2 loops?
Because the routes would be much shorter. It all has to do with the turnaround time.
So they would drop the kids off and go back for another round, and who's staff it? So the kids would have a longer day. Some of the kids would be at school waiting while the second round goes?
No, you just need, right now we have 4 routes, and so we need the contract transportation to address 1 or 2 of those routes. When we were making the transportation changes, you go from 4 to 3 routes. So our existing fleet could make that turnaround time. So you need a sufficient gap in the times between the schools to turn it around.
But
Dr.
if
Wright,
you,
would
if
you
you
want to
talk about the number
anything?
of children that sit on a bus, there's 66 seats in a bus. I don't see how those children sitting on the bus would need less seats when they're going to school at the same time for 5 schools.
Well, I guess what we're asking, what we talking about which option right now, just so I'm not. Well, there was neighborhood schools, so the routes would be shorter with neighborhood schools. And again, with the start times, it's all local. Yeah, less kids need buses. It depends on the walk. The walk zone wasn't I wasn't prepared to answer questions tonight, but I certainly would help with a focus group in that if you need be. But one of the problems that existed with options A and B was concerns about how much time is on the bus. So the neighborhood school addressed that issue, where it cut the routes basically 40 to 50% in time on the bus, allowing another bus to go out, drop the kids, go back and get a local route, scoop those kids up and bring them back to the school. So potential for that is limited based on the number of buses. We wouldn't necessarily do that unless we had to because we didn't have enough buses. But this is a 3-year projection. So we're looking to purchase the buses to absorb those routes that are currently used by the contractor. Because our commitment, always by the board and everyone else, has been we want our little ones taken care of by the in-house. So Whitman and Stimson and Silas right now are covered mostly by the contractor. Stimson and Silas exclusively by the contractor. So we're looking to absorb those routes back along with purchasing new buses, taking the fleet and retiring buses. And I know a gentleman over here was talking about, cost and everything like that. It's a matter of, that's why start times is a conversation. It's a matter of being able to go from one school to the other without having to do that double run, is what you're saying. So that's, no, initially no, because we felt we could get to that number of buses. If we were to do currently, today, every bus in-house, not counting all the private schools that we do and everything else, there's 50 some odd runs that are done on outside. If we were to do that today in-house, we would need 68 large buses and approximately 32 or 33 small buses, the vans. Our plan in the neighborhood schools was initially 52 in-house buses large, and right now we have 35. So over those years, the next 3 or 4 years, we'd be purchasing those buses to get the fleet up. We're involved right now. When I got here, when I took over the liaison piece 3 years ago, one of the things we had an issue with was the age of our buses. 75% of our fleet was older than 2012. So with 75% of the fleet older than 2012, they were not environmentally sound buses because diesel buses in 2012 are required to have diesel emission fluid. And with the addition of that, the exhaust on a diesel bus turned to nitrogen and water instead of smoke, like you're used to seeing. Currently, we have approximately 70% of our buses newer than 2012. So that takes care of that part of it. We obsolete those buses and get into an asset management program where, as time goes on, we rotate these buses out of the fleet where they still are insured. We really wanted to turn the garage into a place where they were doing just general maintenance on buses. Our cost to maintain the buses was always increased based on the age of the bus, where things we couldn't do in-house, like weld stairs on a bus, went to the outside, and that's an extensive cost. We want to limit that cost, and that's why we're in that asset management program right now. I know I'm not being as clear because I don't have a prepared presentation, but
Thank you.
I'm not on 3 minutes, am I?
No, thank you, Dr. Wright. I know there's so many transportation issues. I mean, that's why we're having the focus group. And yes, I think you'll be a great asset on
His
that
comment
group.
for those at home said he dreams in yellow, since you're not on the mic. I just wanted everyone at home to know that you dream in yellow. I didn't know how many seconds I had left, but I just wanted to.
I think you were up, but go ahead. Just
No, I'm pretty sure I timed.
we interrupted. We had questions, so go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, yesterday I left Dr. D'Elia's office feeling really good, and tonight I really didn't feel great because I felt like saying the only reason we're going away from these options is because parents like K-2 is disingenuous. Those two options were not fully thought out, and I think you all saw how many problems there were with them, and I just think that trust is hard to gain and easy to lose, and a little bit more of openness and honesty in where you're going through with the paperwork and what you need to look at. No one's asking you to be perfect. We're just asking you to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's the end of our list of speakers. I've got a request to take a 10-minute break to stretch, and then we'll come back with the board meeting. All right. Mr. Zav, I see a thumbs up, so I think that means we're good to go. All right, moving on to the agenda. I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda. Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Scragg. Any questions on the agenda? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. We are moving on to communications. Our first communication is from Stimson Middle School Principal Mike Duggan. Mr. Duggan, are you here? Come on down.
Can you skip the consent agenda? Okay, I gotta come back. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hello. How are you doing tonight? Over there?
Oh, wherever you want. You just yell.
I'll just yell.
Use your principal voice.
I can do that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. How is everyone tonight? Good. This is about high hold.
All right.
All right. Correct?
Go ahead.
Yes. All right. So we recently communicated with the Board of Education and the Cabinet. Sorry, just a little nervous. We have a really exciting event coming on November 8th. It's been communicated recently through Parent Square, but in a nutshell, what we're doing, sorry, you know I was talking tonight. In a nutshell, what we are doing is to honor the 100th year anniversary of the district. We have resurrected a really great family-oriented event at Stimson Middle School. What we'll be doing is using a lot of what Henry Stimson has done in the past, and we're bringing it into a modern format on November 8th. Sorry. No, I don't.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. So back in the early 1920s, Henry Stimson, when he was living in the Highhold estate in West Hills, he would ride his horse all over the area. And if we know anything about horses, they like to leave little treats wherever they go. So Henry Stimson thought it was really awful for this kind of activity, with his neighbors. So he wanted to always give back to his neighbors. So what he ended up doing is, around Thanksgiving time, is he would hold a really great event called the Highhold Games. He would invite all of the neighborhood into his home, and they would play games, things like wheelbarrow races. They would do things like running races, all sorts of fun games for the families, and then they would share food like donuts and cider and things like that. So we thought, as a way to commemorate the 100th year anniversary, we're going to replicate that, at Stimson. So on, again, November 8th, we're going to have our very first Highhold Games. We're inviting all Stimson families to come. We're inviting everyone to come. But we're going to have a large series of events. So we're going to have all sorts of races, cornhole. We're going to have wheelbarrow races, egg on the spoon races, and we're going to end the day with 2 larger tournaments. We're going to have a pickleball tournament as well as a flag football tournament. We're inviting students, obviously, to take part and staff to take part in those games. We just sent out a really great website that goes through the history of the Highhold Games, and it has the registration information included in that website as well. So we're really excited. We've been doing a lot of work. This really started on July 1st, where we, as a team, came together really thinking about how do we best celebrate the 100th year anniversary, and we think that this is going to be a really wonderful event, and we hope that everyone can join us.
Thank you, Mr. Duggan. It looks great. It looks wonderful. We look forward to seeing it. Thank you for bringing it to Stimson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. In my excitement to hear from Mr. Duggan, I forgot to we forgot to approve the bids and bills. So I'll take a motion to approve items E through H. Is there a motion? Ms. Meyer, second. Mr. Scragg, any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Moving on to our communications. We have a communication from Doug Atkins, South Huntington Soccer. Are you here today? No? Okay. We have numerous communications that we received from community members regarding proposed reconfiguration of elementary schools. I think we've addressed those thus far. We'll move on to new business. New business item 1, approval of the tax levy for the 2024-2025 school year. Motion. Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Biangasso. Mr. Conway, can you tell us what's going on here?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. So tonight, for the board's approval, we're looking to set the tax rate, which varies slightly from the time the budget was adopted in the past. It's based on the assessed valuation of each property. We've recently heard from the town that the overall assessed valuation, according to the town, is slightly higher than the estimate from the spring by about $35,000. That's a favorable rate for the taxpayer. It looks to be an approximate savings of about $2.49 per 1,000 of assessed valuation versus the time we were projecting this during budget development season. Obviously, the tax per household is based on various factors, but overall, this is the favorable result for the taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Always a good news when the tax rate decreases. Any questions from the board? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to new business. Item number 2 is the approval of Board Policy 7500 regarding naming of school facilities. Is there a motion? Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Scragg. This is a policy that has been forwarded pursuant to policy to all district constituents. No objections or concerns were raised. It's a new policy for the district. It establishes a procedure whereby if someone wants to name something after someone, recognitions or memorials for former students, employees, provides a process. Also, if people are interested in dedicating a tree or a bench in honor of somebody, provides a streamlined process that we didn't have before, where the request will be made to the Board of Education, and its Facilities Committee will make a recommendation to the full board, and the board will decide on that recommendation. Any questions on the policy? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. We have request to remain number 1 for 2 students. Motion? We're going to table it, yeah. We'll take a motion to table. Mr. Scragg, seconded by Mr. Bronson. All in favor of tabling? Any opposed? All right, new business item number 3 has been tabled for more information. New business item number 4 is another request to remain, this one by a student attending Countrywood. Is there a motion? Ms. Beyer, second. Mr. Scragg, any questions? This was discussed in executive session. All in favor of the request? All opposed? All right, the request to remain is denied, 0-6. If you can send a letter, Ms. Caliendo, notifying the family. Thank you. Moving on to new business, item number 5 is the approval of an out-of-state field trip to Six Flags for a physics trip. Motion. Mr. Scragg, seconded by Mr. Bronson. Ms. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. For the board's approval tonight, we have a request for about 150 students in 11th and 12th grade physics and engineering classes to go to Six Flags in New Jersey on May 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
I've chaperoned that trip before. It's very fun for any of the parents that are open to chaperoning. It's a good experience.
Do you go on the roller coasters?
I did.
Oh, wow. I'm too scared to go on them. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Moving on to new business, item number 6 is the approval of confidentiality and data security and privacy agreements for various vendors. Is there a motion? Mr. Biangasso, seconded by Ms. Meyer. Dr. Hender.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ciapetta. Tonight, for the board's approval, I present 9 applications that have agreed to our confidentiality, data security, and privacy agreement. All these applications help enhance our students' learning experiences and are EdLaw 2D compliant.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. New business item 7 is a request for a board member to attend the New York State School Board Association Annual Conference in New York City. Motion. Mr. Scragg, seconded by Mr. Bronson. Any questions? This is the annual New York State School Boards Association. We've got a very good calendar of events this year, including an AI robot to speak to us. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Moving on to new business item number 8. I'll take a motion. Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Biangasso. Okay, Dr. D'Elia. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. This is a very generous donation from Elliot Leonardo, who happens to be a parent and also a realtor, for Signature Premier Properties, and it is a donation of $1,000 that will be geared towards the 100th anniversary of our beautiful district.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? We thank Mr. Leonardo. I don't think he can be here tonight for his continued generosity. He's a good friend of South Huntington. Move on to new business item number 9, recommendations for the placements of students by the Committee on Special Education, various states listed, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, various states listed. Motion. Ms. LaCara, seconded by Ms. Meyer. Any questions on the placements? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Moving on to personnel, we have our personnel schedules 2, 4, 5, 9, 11, 15, 16, 17, 20, and 22. Could I have a motion? Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Scragg. Any questions on personnel? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Committee reports, there are no committees. And future meetings. We have future meetings are listed. Our next board meeting will be October 23rd, which is Board Recognition Month, followed by November 13th, followed by December 10th, which is on a special date due to it coinciding with our actual 100th anniversary. Comments by board members? No comments? Okay, now we're giving a lot of comments. Dr. D'Elia, comments by you?
Yes, just real quickly, I looked at the 10-day forecast. Friday looks pretty good for homecoming weekend. We'll keep watching it every day, but we're looking forward to a wonderful homecoming that's really a K-12, pre-K to 12 experience here. And I know Dr. Murphy and his team, and they've been working really hard. We look forward to Friday night with the carnival, powder puff, fireworks show, and then the parade on Saturday and our football game. So we've made it very much a community event here in South Huntington, our homecoming. So, you know, we need Mother Nature on our side because that really contributes to a great turnout, and we're looking forward to it next week.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia. All right, comments by ex officio student member of the Board of Education. Gracie.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope this week has been going well for all of you. I just wanted to discuss a few upcoming events as well as some events that just recently took place. But before that, I would like to acknowledge the amazing start to the school year that all the students have had. And we're kind of getting to the point where it's going to start to get busy, but with that comes some excitement. So for Whitman, first of all, I just wanted to say we had senior nights for varsity sports. We had volleyball, football, soccer, and then gymnastics and swimming was tonight. So super duper fun. On the musical side, we had marching band. They started their rehearsals as well as rehearsals for the fall play, which is The Man Who Came to Dinner. I might be biased when I say this because I'm in the play, but I think everyone should come see it. It's November 8th and 9th. I know there's a Stimson event on the 8th, but you can always come the 9th. So it's fun. One more thing about Whitman before I move on to Stimson. We had a new phone rule enforced at the beginning of this year, and basically when students, when you get into class, you have to put your phone into a caddy, and you're not allowed to touch it the whole period. Some students were not too happy about it, but it's actually been really beneficial, and the teachers have been very good at enforcing it, and I know it's effective, and I know everyone's following the rule because I walk into the hallways during passing, and everyone is like trying to get all their notifications set, so that's going well. Then for Stimson, I decided to go to a girls' field hockey game. I was very impressed. We have a very good group of girls coming up to Whitman, and Ms. Tona is doing a very good job coaching them. One more thing before I talk about homecoming, super exciting. Birchwood and Maplewood, they had their track and field days at Whitman, so they've been being bussed over for the past couple days, and they've been doing these little track events. It's super cute. I was taking a test today, and I look outside, and they're like playing music and having fun. So super exciting. And I also talked to a 5th grader who talked about how she changes classes during the day. She spends half the day with a science teacher, half the day with a social studies teacher. And she told me that her and her friends, they love it because they feel, quote unquote, old, 5th grader language, but they really like it, and they're definitely going to be prepared for 6th grade now, so good thing. Now, last thing, homecoming. On the 18th, there's the carnival, which is super fun. Everyone's invited. And there's the Powder Puff game. So if you haven't heard of it, juniors versus seniors. The girls play football, and the boys do the halftime show. Super funny. It'll be fun. And then the following day, we have the homecoming parade at 4, and the game at 6 against Connecticut, which we will hopefully win. And I think we will, because our football team has been doing amazing. So yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you, Gracie. I heard that the juniors are favored to win the Powder Puff game. Is that true or not?
No, definitely not with me on the senior team. That can't happen.
We look forward to it. Thank you for your report. Any voice of the residents? Okay. I will take then a motion to go into executive session to discuss a matter of personnel. Mr. Scraggs, seconded by Mr. Bronson. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll go into executive session. Thank you, everyone.